So before we get started in today's video, I just want to let you guys know that we are looking for a new hire here. So if you guys are interested and you are a qualified camera op and editor, please look in the description below. There's some information on where you can apply. Speaking of apply, we're gonna be applying some updates to a build that we worked on. And no, we're not talking about this guy right here. We're gonna go ahead and take it back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. Oops, I'm a white boy that can't rap, and that's okay. Because one of the ideas behind this build was we made some design concepts and the parts that we chose so that we could upgrade this in the future. Our theoretical summer job earned us enough money to put some more money into this. We're gonna talk about today some logical upgrade paths, where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense, and then we're gonna play with it. Corsair is proud to present their new Hydro X line of custom water cooling products. The new XG Vive series radiators offer the perfect balance of fin density and airflow to keep your loop cool and quiet. The XG7 water blocks feature full coverage cooling for your GPU, while also maintaining an aesthetically pleasing design, while the XC7 and XC9 CPU blocks keep all your modern CPUs nice and cool. To see the complete lineup of Hydro X cooling products from Corsair, click the link in the description below. If you guys have not seen the first part of this video where we built this, I highly recommend you go and watch it now. We went to Micro Center, we bought all these parts, we put it together, we talked about the logic behind it, why we compromised in some areas and overspent in others. And the reason why we are doing today's video is to show you how that sort of all tied together. Now, just as sort of a quick recap, if you're not familiar with the parts that are in this, it's an AMD R5 2600. So it's a 6-core, 12-thread processor, which means that we've got plenty of threads for multi-threaded workload. Now, because we went with AMD, we saved money versus the offerings from Intel. Intel versus Ryzen 2000 series does have a superior IPC, but when you're shopping in these price points, you don't have the luxury of going with, I want the highest end CPU I can get. I want IPC, I want core clock, I want overclocking. You have to make compromises. And the AMD 2600 that we got at the price that we got it for made it just the best value proposition as well as performance proposition in its price point. Now for graphics, we went with an RX 570 8GB. So we are gonna be upgrading our graphics card today. Because we went with the 2600, the graphics card is what really was the next logical upgrade path. There's nothing antiquated about an AMD 2600. Like I said, 6 cores, 12 threads. It does have overclocking ability, which we're gonna be playing with today by adding in a better cooler. But because we went with a 500GB SATA SSD for around 49 bucks, an absolute steal. SSD prices have come down dramatically, and a 2TB mechanical drive for our mass storage and our less frequently played games or games that don't need, quick loading times. We don't need to touch our storage. A lot of people also questioned why we went with the CX650M or a 650 watt power supply when we were running hardware that didn't need that. Well, that's because, as I mentioned in that video, if we had gone with a power supply that barely met our needs, it means to upgrade the graphics card, we would also have to upgrade our power supply. And for RAM, we do have 16GB of DDR4. So what we're gonna do today is cooling upgrades, a little bit of overclocking, and changing out our graphics cards. So what we've got right here are 4 different graphics cards, 2 from NVIDIA and 2 from AMD, and basically 2 direct competitors. So we have an RTX 2060, which has been out now for close to a year. And then we've got the 2060 Super, which has preceded it. But both of these cards are still available on the market today. The 60 and the Super are permanent SKUs. So the 2060 would directly compete with the Radeon 5700. It's important to note that by the time you watch this video here in the very near future, custom cards will exist for the 5700 series, which you should definitely take a look at because this is a blower card and this is a dual axial fan card. And then we have 2 cards here that also directly compete in terms of pricing, the 5700 XT and the 2060 Super. Now, both of these options are very expensive given the total cost of the system that we started with. And that's because we got a killer deal on our 570 8GB. We got that for $140. But some of the mentality I'm using here is, okay, if this were a real build and I'm really doing this in real life, I'm not gonna just take, is this real life? Or is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. If this were my actual build and I'm trying to maximize this, I'm gonna try and sell that 570X or that 570 8GB, apply that towards the cost of the 5700 or a 2060. Both of these cards are right around $350. Yeah, not cheap, not super high end, but definitely bumping up into that high end category. Because the goal is now to step up our resolution to 1440p gaming, we're gonna be going with the 5700. because of raw horsepower. What you gain with the NVIDIA cards is extra tensor cores and RT cores so you can play around with things like ray tracing and DLSS and all of that. But ray tracing on a 2060 at even 1080p is gonna give us such a performance hit that it would look great in things like Ansible screenshots and all that sort of stuff. It's not something I would turn on if I were particularly gaming. So if I was trying to maximize my budget build, which is now not really a budget build, now it's turning into an enthusiast build pretty quickly, I'm going with the 5700. Now, if you want to spend a little bit less even, you could look at something like a 1660 Ti or a 1660. But the problem is, in my personal opinion, the price point to performance gain is not necessarily worth it from the 570 8GB. I would just stay here until I could spend more and make a bigger jump in performance. Now for the CPU cooler, we've got some options here. Once you start stepping up from the stock cooler, you do have some small AIO options, like we have the Corsair H60 here, which is a single 120mm fan with a single 120 radiator that's a slim rad, which is gonna fit in pretty much any case. The other option is air cooling. And at the same price point, you have the Be Quiet Dark Rock Slim. It's 180 watt TDP, more than enough cooling for our 6-core 12-thread processor, our 2600, which means we do have overclocking headroom. We can play around with it. But again, this is like 64 bucks or thereabouts. But because we don't want to just throw all of our money out the window and maybe we're not ready to spend 70 bucks on a cooler, we're gonna go with a different option here. We're gonna go with the Be Quiet Shadow Rock LP, which could be had in like the $45 price range. But the reason why I'm going with this is because we are gonna be pushing the B450 a little bit with overclocking it. We are gonna be actually going with a downfire fan. So I said this in our previous video, where when you push air down, you actually cool the neighboring components. In this case, we'll be touching airflow on the memory, as well as the VRMs and the chokes and the MOSFETs and all that sort of stuff. There are plenty of options out there on the market. This is one that we happen to have on hand and that we believe is going to give that value that somebody upgrading a budget build would want. And because it comes with the Pure Wings 2 fan, means that we are going to get good static pressure through here while also doing it very quietly. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and upgrade this. Let's see how it compares to last time. So here's the final result, and realistically the only things we upgraded are the graphics card and the cooler. The one thing to keep in mind though is this is not an easy cooler to install. If I had to give this a score, I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10 in terms of frustration level. We'll see how the temperatures do here in a minute. Because you can only mount it basically horizontal, if that makes sense, facing front to rear, you can't adjust by 90-degree increments what direction it faces. You only have 180 adjustment, right or left, overhanging over the VRM or overhanging over the RAM. Now I'm pretty convinced we could have gotten RAM in and out if I hung it over there, but we are using RAM that has no heat sinks. So if you had any sort of a heat sink that added any height to it whatsoever, it wouldn't fit. So that's why we were hanging it over the VRM. The graphics card, this is the Dragon, the 570X, or the 570 8GB Dragon. So we basically are using the premise of we could have gotten anywhere between $100 to $120 used for this card. So with the price of the cooler being $44.90 on Amazon, and then this graphics card being, well, the one we put in there, the 570 blower style, which technically they're not making anymore. You could probably still buy them. They're still available as of today when making this video for $329.99, which gives us a grand total of $374 for our upgrade, minus $100 for selling our card used, means for about $275, this is what we've got. Now in terms of cooling, if I had a dual axial 570, which is coming, like I said at the start of this video, custom cards are coming, I would be concerned with the fact that we only have one 120mm exhaust fan. I know I said I was gonna add another one, but I didn't. You can see right here, we just still have the one exhaust fan. The reason why I didn't is not because it wouldn't fit or anything. It does fit up here. There are 2 spots up here for 120 exhaust fans. But the thing is, this particular motherboard, because we went as fairly cheap of a 450 as we could get. In fact, I think it was the cheapest 450 we could buy at the time. We don't have enough fan headers to add more fans. As it is, I have one PWM splitter on here, allowing us to have the 2 front fans actually doing something. So we don't have a fan header to plug it into. So adding a $10 fan and then adding a $5 splitter and all that, I just wasn't going through all of that. I'm convinced the 120 is gonna be enough because of the blower cooler exhausting all of its own heat out the back and not putting it into the chassis like dual axial fans do. So here's what we gotta do now. We gotta put the side panel on. We gotta go in here and just give it a little bit of an overclock. So let's go ahead and fire it up, see what 1080p performance and 1440 looks like, because today's goal is 60 FPS 1440. So we're up and running. We've got the case side panel closed because we don't want to interfere with any of the cooling at all. The ambient temperatures in here, when you're gonna see temp and stuff talked about, is 23C or 22.8, which is roughly 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So here's what we're gonna do. We're starting off with Dirt Rally, and we are comparing this to the previous 3 games we ran last time, which was Dirt Rally, Doom, and Far Cry 5. Because it's a good mixture of like Vulkan API. This one here is just an older game, and then Doom, I already said that. Far Cry 5 is a very good CPU/GPU bound game. Like, it kind of alternates through the test. So we're gonna start here first with 1920 by 1080. All the same settings as last time, ultra settings. We're just gonna run the benchmark mode. And what we're gonna show you here is why I say this build is targeted at a good 1440p gaming experience. What you're gonna find is that you are leaving a lot of performance on the table simply because the high frame rates are hard for a CPU with Ryzen 2 IPC to handle. And that's evident here by the GPU only being at 52C. This is edge temp, and this is TJ, or thermal junction. This is the utilization right here. This is our core frequency. So you can see that it's not fully maxing out. I mean, it's not terrible, but this is not our full boost clock either. We should be boosting up to approximately 1850. I do have, by the way, I wanna mention this, because this is a high-end card, I do have the power limit maxed, and then I do have a small overclock, about 100 megahertz, being applied to the graphics card, 1750 up to 1850, and then it can choose whether or not it wants to use it. So there's no fine tuning or any of that. I just moved one slider and then maxed out the power target, that's it, which is not calling for more voltage or anything. It just means we're letting it pull more power before it pulls frequency, if that makes sense. So you can see our utility dropped all the way down to the 60s, and it'll come back. But look, this will drop sometimes under 1,000 megahertz, like 800, 900 megahertz. See, like right there. There you go. So that just goes to show how this is, in the true sense of the word, bottlenecking for 1080p. So it's not like this is a bad number, 141.97. We just know that that was not the full potential of the graphics card. If we had a higher IPC and a higher clock CPU, like let's say an older like 7700K or something that was at like 48, 49, or let's say even a 9700K running at 5 gigahertz, we would probably see this jump up into like the 160s, maybe even higher, maybe even 170s, just because of what the utility of the graphics card is. So 141.97 is what that test was, and what we're gonna look at now is what the 1440p results are. So as you can see in 1440 though, we're sitting at high 90s in utilization, and our core clock is nearly at the 1850 max that we're allowing it to hit. And our temperature is up quite a bit, but still 70C, 71C with a blower cooler. So we went from 141 down to 128.62 at 1440p. So as you can see, this is most definitely a 1440p build. So we're gonna go ahead and look at Far Cry 5 next though, because we know that that one is a fairly good mix of CPU and GPU during that test. So here's the 1080p results in Far Cry 5. Our minimum was 71, average 93, not bad, but the utilization on it was extremely low. If we jump over here to 1440, look, our minimum is only 2 less in 1440. So from 93 to 84, that's a very small drop in performance considering the percentage of pixel increase that we added by going to 1440. Just further proof, our goal with this upgrade path was 1440p gaming. If you do want to go high frame rate 1080p, then you would have to have a processor capable of higher core clocks to make up the difference. So Doom, one of the best AAA titles that you could play because of the fact that it will run on a potato, which means as long as we enable Vulkan and we have everything set to ultra, we know we have enough performance for that. Remember what it did last time? Like 140 FPS in 1080? So yeah, it's just 200 FPS is the engine cap, and that's clearly where we're sitting. And as you can see, it's still taking 82% of the GPU to do it though. That's cool. This is so smooth. So I mean, it's just locked at 200. So that's a really dark scene, huh? Let's do this. Well, we're gonna go 1440. Okay, so look, we're at now like 178 in 1440. Oh, he's already dead. Dude, this FPS though. We capped out the frames per second on the engine. We are nearly there with 1440. It's 100 FPS right here. Now, I'm well aware that this is very indicative of Doom performance. GTA 5 type of title would probably run 60 FPS-ish in 1440. And that's just because of how much of the world is being rendered on the world thread and all that. So, I mean, can we really call this a budget build now? So if our original build was approximately $610-ish, and Phil could put up the exact numbers here, but approximately $610, I think $14, minus the 100 we got back for the graphics card, so that's $514. Plus we spent $274, so $888, which is not like a budget build anymore. But it started as a budget build, and it led to this. And the fact that we can at least play one title in 4K, never mind the fact that most 4K panels are gonna cost more than the actual tower anyway at this point, very, very doable. So anyway, this was just a video I wanted to make kind of showing the logical upgrade path. The CPU with that particular cooler, we did a lot of Blender benchmark testing with it to see what the max temperature was gonna be, and we maxed out at 82. And that's at 4 gigahertz. I don't think I ever even mentioned this is overclocked to 4 gigs all core, memory still sitting at 3000. We saw a very good increase of performance in Cinebench at 1366 or 1367 was our max score there, up from just under 12,000 at stock speeds, or 12,000, yeah, 1200, 1200 at stock speeds. We have seen the cooler was worth the overclock that we were able to do, because our last test was at stock. With the stock cooler, you wouldn't do anything beyond that. So it just kind of shows some of the logical, like if you make the right choices and you don't scrimp on the certain parts you shouldn't scrimp at the start and save money in areas that make sense, this is the type of result you can end up with. So hopefully this is giving you guys food for thought when it comes to the systems and what you should be looking for when you are trying to save money, because had we gone with the wrong power supply and stuff on day one, it would have cost us even more today. But because we didn't, we could spend more on our GPU. Also, if 1080p was your goal, this is totally unnecessary. Don't buy the graphics card, get the cooler, but don't buy the graphics card, and just stick with the 578 gig that we started with in this entire video series. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you guys want to see more comparative price points, comment down below or head to Twitter and tell me where you think we should spend. There's so many different price points. Most people tend to stick around the $750 to $1,000 to $1,500 range. $1,500 would get you an amazing PC. $1,000, there's enough options there for people to kind of get confused. So where do you think we should price our next budget-ish build? And sound off in the comments below, and we'll do the best we can to accommodate that. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next ones. And enjoy these outtakes. Okay. I got you. So here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna go ahead. Oh wait, now we need to talk about the CPU cooling. My bad. Did you ever play World of Warcraft? So they'd run past and then bring like 20 with them. They're like, oh, it's red, okay.
It's,
well, I can see
no,
the
actually
light.
this is a Sony.
Oh. Whoa, that was a big ass 40,000. 40,000!